Is the middle class dying? Let me give you my understanding before we get into the videos. I believe the definition of middle class has changed. I believe maybe in the 60s, 70s, the middle class represented a house that you owned, one or two cars that you were able to afford, family of four, a vacation or two a year, and some savings. I think now in 2024, middle class means you're barely able to pay your bills, and in most cases, and maybe in some cases, not even be able to do that. But the issue is being middle class, you make too much money to receive any type of assistance from the government. As far as poor people, they get tons of tons of tons of my lord, the word is escaping me. Tons of benefits, food stamps, reduced housing. It's all types of programs for the poor people. But being middle class, you're almost kind of punished nowadays. Like I said, you make just enough not to be able to qualify for any assistance, and clearly, you're not rich enough to keep up with the cost of inflation. Let's get into these videos.
In today's world, middle class and upper middle class is the worst spot you can be in financially. You're the people who pay all the taxes. Rich people don't pay taxes. Poor people don't pay taxes. If you're at about 0 to 30,000 a year, you get food stamps, you get Section 8 housing or subsidized housing, you get lots of tax credits back when tax season comes. Those people pay no money in taxes and get 10 grand back. And if you're rich, you're using all your write-offs between your houses, depreciating real estate, losses on business. You're not paying any tax. And if you make about 60,000 to 250,000, those are the people that pay the taxes for the entire world. Those people can't qualify for lower housing. They can't qualify for food stamps. They can't qualify for financial aid with school. Those are the people who is the worst spot you can be in. And I was in that spot for a long time and wondered why I was the one paying all the taxes until I learned how to grow out of the middle class. So if you're in the middle class, obviously you don't want to go down. You want to grow out of it. And you have to stop thinking like the middle class, where you have a house that's a huge mortgage payment, 2 or 3 car payments, student loan payments, and you work till you're 65 because that's how you stay in the middle class. You have to start thinking of ways to how to escape that and achieve financial freedom and passive income, and how to find these tax write-offs so where you can keep money. Because to me, you don't have to necessarily earn more money if you're keeping all your money. If you're making 200,000 a year now and you're paying 60,000 in taxes, if you can just figure out a way to do tax write-offs through business, through real estate, then now you're making an extra 60,000 a year by not paying the government taxes, legally, of course.
I believe that he's actually spot on. Like I said, it just piggybacks on what I was saying earlier. Like I said, the definition of middle class has changed. Like I said, middle class pretty much does all the heavy lifting falls on the middle class as far as taxes. Like I said, you're taxed out of this world, and rich people, obviously, they have businesses and they're able to legally write things off through their businesses, through business expenses. And like I said, poor people, they qualify for every benefit in the book.
One thing I've learned about being an American citizen is that it's better to be poor than be middle class. Because being middle class is the hardest fucking shit. You literally can't get no fucking help from the government if you are middle class. And you barely can survive out here being middle class. It's like if you're middle class, you don't qualify for certain things. Like you can't qualify for an apartment because you got to make 3 to 4 times the rent. And of course, you're not making that being middle class. And I'm literally like right over the threshold of being fucking poor. And it's fucking dumb as hell, because if you're making over $2,500 in a month, you can't even qualify for any fucking governmental assistance. That makes no goddamn sense to me. Because $2,500 in a month is literally nothing when you have all other types of fucking bills. America's really like ass fucking backwards.
Yeah, $2,500 a month is absolutely nothing, especially where you got rent. I mean, it's 1,500 to 2,000 in some states just for a 1 bedroom.
two groups of people right now in America that are struggling. Group number one is the unemployment, the minimum wage, and people living in poverty. That has been a problem for so many decades and needs to be addressed. The new bucket of individuals, this has started ever since the pandemic, started a little earlier, but it sped up during the pandemic. This is the bucket of what used to be the middle class. This is the group of people who are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, working 2 jobs and a side hustle, barely getting by. These are people who have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, trades, skills, work their way up in a company. So when we hear the boomers saying that you need to work harder, you're entitled and lazy, that is why that second group of people are getting so offended, because they're doing everything that they can. And they're not working a second job so they can save up for a house or go on vacation or buy their children stuff. They are working a second job just to keep the lights on, just to have a few extra $100 in an emergency fund. So that second group of people are now speaking up, and both groups need help. And that's why we need to come together and address the cost of living and cost of housing. Because if we let this go another 5 to 7 years, we're going to see a huge gap in wealth.
Yeah, like I said, he's totally spot on. Like I said, I think honestly, one of the solutions for a lot of people, like I said, if you're not making probably at least about 150 to 200 grand by yourself, we're gonna have to start looking into ideas of strategic partnerships. All that love stuff is gonna have to go out the window. You're gonna have to get with someone and y'all have an understanding. Hey, we're gonna get together. We're gonna make this thing work. We're gonna pool our resources together. That way, you actually have a chance at life, a chance to actually get ahead. Like I said, all this, people want to be individuals and getting with people because it feels good and they're cute and they're sexy. That's gonna have to go out the window. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. And also, what do you think is the number that you need to feel secure in today's economy? Is it 100,000, 200,000, 75,000? Let me know in the comments below.
The middle class in this country is disappearing. Here's why. Don't know if you guys have noticed, but the middle class in this country is slowly disappearing, emerging with the working class. Amidst a massive housing crisis in the UK, particularly in London, people just cannot afford to buy a house. People can't afford assets. The rich are getting richer and richer. They're buying assets, and it's making it more difficult for the average person, middle class and working class, but particularly the middle class, who are getting squeezed. It's now near on impossible for the average person to buy a property without help from bank of mum and dad or massive inheritance. So what's happening is the middle class are saving, but they're not saving enough. They're not able to buy house prices. So they're saving, but the house prices are going up further than what people can save. So in 5 to 10 years, this is my prediction, I don't believe there is going to be a middle class. I think there's going to be an upper class and there's going to be a working class. About 20, 30, 40 years ago, working class people and middle class people could work a standard job and on one income were able to get on the property ladder. What's happening nowadays is parents are getting older. They're selling their houses to pay for their retirement and elderly care. And that's leaving young people without any inheritance. So without that, they're finding it very, very difficult to get on the housing ladder, and they're in fact unable to buy property. Without property or assets, you constantly have to go to the rich to rent off them and to buy their products just to survive. And as your wage increases have no chance in hell of catching up with the massive increase in inflation and rise in price of these assets, you're basically doomed. So my prediction is in the next 5 to 10 years, anyone who's middle class is going to seep into the working class. And unless you can buy assets, you're basically screwed.
Yeah, like I said, he's pretty much spot on. Again, like I said, if you're smart, the future is going to be strategic partnerships. Like I mentioned before, you're going to have to partner up with somebody, like I said, unless you just have a huge income and you're able to afford these rising costs and housing and food and in every other area. You're going to have to, like I said, put love to the side, put your feelings to the side, and get with someone, and y'all form, like I said, a strategic partnership, and y'all pool your resources together.
Back to 1980 to 2000 to today, you can see the major problem that we're having. The writing's on the wall. Here's the average housing prices: 47K, 120, 420, 13% interest rate in 1980, then 8% in 2000, 8% today. $600 out the door payment a month, $1,200, $3,700. But here's the problem. Back in 1980, what do you think you needed to qualify for this home? $18,000 in income, but yet the median household income was $21,000. That makes sense. The average American could buy the average house. In 2000, 20 years later, same thing. $38K to qualify, $42,000 median household income. Makes sense. Then today, this is the problem. $120,000 in salary to qualify, and yet the median household income is $81,000. They cannot qualify, so people are forced to rent. But let's look at the rent prices. In 1980, you could rent for $308, which was only 17% of your income. In 2000, if you didn't want to buy, you could rent for $600, 17% of your income. Well, today, people don't have a choice. There are 100 million people right now in this country that are forced to rent, which is 29.6% of their income. So many families can't afford to buy, and they're being forced to pay these high rent prices, and that's why they're feeling the pressure. We are witnessing, this year will go down in history as the year the middle class has finally disappeared. So we need to find a solution, and we need to find one fast.
They said you will own nothing and be happy. I mean, looking at this data, it looks like that's the path that we're definitely trending towards.
Y'all notice the shift of middle class and maybe even upper middle class people trying to claim that they're poor now? There was a show recommended to me on Netflix called How to Get Rich, and I wasn't even a minute into the first piece of dialogue. The host, he's going through these people's finances, and they're making $24,000 a month. I want you to think about what $24,000 a month would look like for you. How carefully curated would your bank account be if you had $24,000? For most people, that type of money would be a life-changing event. Now let's go back to the show. Guess how much they spend per month? $27,000 fucking dollars. Anytime I run across a TikTok video that's talking about the way of the world, talking about finances, talking about the economy, I don't disagree that we're in a time period where shit just costs a bunch of fucking money for no fucking reason. You know what I'm saying? I don't disagree that inflation is whooping most people's ass. I do. I understand. But when it comes to the people who are making $24,000 a month and they love to scream, oh, I'm still living paycheck to paycheck. Well, I wonder why, Brenda. I fucking wonder why. Living outside your means is a real thing. Lifestyle creep is a real thing. And in the case of middle class, upper middle class, at this point, I don't think it's about the economy. I think it's the fact that you bitches don't know how to handle your finances. And this is a hill that I'm willing to die on. Cause how do you spend $27,000 fucking dollars and you only made 24?
Well, I mean, like I said, this is definitely exception to the rule. I mean, most people are not making $24,000 a month, but in this case that she's referring to, yeah, I mean, if you're making $24,000 a month, you're spending $27,000. That's probably because, like I said, you're living well beyond your means, and yeah, like I said, trying to probably live like you're a millionaire and you're not. Like I said, and I mean, no one's going to feel bad for someone making nearly 25 grand a month and not be able to afford their bills. Where you have people who can't even afford. You got people who literally living in extended stays hotels just because they can't afford the rent. I'll leave the link in a video. I'll leave the link to that video in the description below.
You don't even realize anymore. It's not even the cost of living no more. It's the cost of surviving. And you're like, that. I don't think a lot of people are realizing this. There is no middle class. Boom, there's your bubble. I'm telling you now, the people who have it and the people who don't are so far apart from each other, it's not even funny. There is no reason somebody should be going bankrupt buying necessities to life. Like, why am I struggling to buy the bare minimum of stuff? I'm not trying to be fancy. I'm not trying to do none of that. I'm just trying to make it by. I'm still struggling. People don't even realize, let me slow down before I freaking blow a brain gasket, whatever the case may be. People don't even realize, and it's not even about race no more. Everybody is feeling this. I don't care if you red, grape, blue, white, yellow, orange, I don't care. The only color that these elite people care about is that green, that money. And if you don't have it, you're...
Like I said, I do think we're trending to a point where we're definitely getting to a point where there is, people that have it and people who don't. I do think the middle class is still existing, but I think people who are in the currently in the middle class, upper middle class, and doing okay. I think you got to really start buckling down, being more strategic, and making sure you're budgeting. Because like I said, I don't think things are going to get any cheaper, and sadly, things are probably going to get worse as we go into the future.
Doesn't agree that $74,000 is middle class. No kidding, it's not even close. Check this out. If you take $74,000 for a Gen Zer, let's say they have a bachelor's degree and they're 25 years old. First of all, $74,000 is much higher than the average income. Most Gen Zers are probably making anywhere from 40 to 50, maybe 60, but let's use 74. The take home after taxes, 401k, and health insurance is $4,300. The average college monthly payment on a loan is about $500. You're down to $3,800. Let's say this person is financially responsible, decides to split a 2-bedroom apartment in a medium-sized city like Orlando, so that their payment is $1,200 apiece, $200 for utilities, so $1,400. Now, unless they're going to have Lucky Charms and peanut butter and jelly, their groceries are going to cost about $600 if they're trying to get chicken, beef, and some healthy stuff. You have a $400 car payment, $200 in insurance, $150 for gas, $100 for a cell phone, leaves you with $950. This is no savings, investment, no emergency fund. Let's give them at least $300 to go on a couple dates or to hang out with their friends for the month so they can enjoy life a little bit. They're left with only $650. A bachelor's degree, $74K salary. You are splitting a 2-bedroom apartment with a friend and only have $650 left a month. It would take you years to save up the $30,000 that you would need for a down payment on a house with the closing costs. But even if you could get that down payment saved, you would still need to make $120,000 a year to be considered for a $400,000 loan. The middle class, the goalpost has been moved from $70K to $120,000 in just the past 2 years.
And my answer to that is, like I said, people are going to have to come to the realization that you're going to have strategic partnerships. Like I said, all that love stuff is going to have to go out the window. You make 75 grand, you got to get with somebody who's at least making 75 grand. You have to have an understanding that we're going to come together, pool these resources, get a house together, even if you got to get some type of contract that solidifies this thing. And that's how a lot of people are going to have to moving forward, or you're just not going to be able to make it. And that's just the bottom line.
Things that middle class sadly cannot afford anymore. A house. The average home prices in the United States is $450,000, with some states going way higher than that. And the salaries have not kept up with the home prices. 2, with cost of living skyrocketing, saving for a vacation has become a luxury that many can't afford. 3, childcare costs, which in some states is higher than college tuition, forcing many moms to leave the workforce to take care of their children. I'm curious, drop a comment. What is middle class in nowadays?
Let me know in the comments below, what do you think is middle class? What do you think the number is today, 2024, to be middle class? Let me know.
A lot of people today will tell you that the middle class in America is dying, and I think they're probably right. It just depends on how you define the term middle class. So for much of the 20th century, being middle class meant you weren't wealthy, but you still owned your own home. You had 1 or 2 cars, you had enough money for dining out, entertainment, family vacations. And so this was the middle class lifestyle that boomers enjoyed when they started having families in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But that lifestyle simply does not exist for 99% of millennials and Gen Z today. Just take a look at housing, for example. In any one of those cities where the millennials and Gen Zers are moving to, where you can get those high salaries, LA, San Diego, Miami, New York, Boston, DC, a decent house in a somewhat decent area is $1.5 million and up. Take a look at what $1.5 million gets you in LA today. So to own this below average house in a not great area of LA, it's going to cost you $13,000 in monthly housing expenses at today's rates. And that's after you made the $150,000 down payment. And the rule of thumb is that your housing costs should be no more than 30% of your monthly gross income. So you would need to make $40,000 a month to be able to afford this not great house in a not great area of LA. And so how many Americans make $40,000 a month? About 3%. And less than 1% of them are millennial or Gen Z. The general unaffordability of modern life is the single most important issue in our country today. Everything else is simply a distraction.
I think he picked out a rare example. I mean, like I said, you don't have to live in a California or New York where housing is that expensive. Obviously $1.5 million home. There's other areas across the country that you could move into that are definitely much more affordable. I mean, even though that your income may not be as high as California, you're definitely not going to be paying $1.5 million for a home. So you definitely have to keep that in mind. Let me know in the comments below, though, do you believe the middle class is dead? I'll look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.